All right, F3 Nation, grab your pad and your pencil and be prepared to take copious notes as we are joined by Dr. Evil from Geneva, Illinois, Carbomb and Peli Peli from Katy, Texas, and they talk about a concept so grand it could not be contained by one region alone. We're talking all three F's, high impact, CSAUP, changing lives. This is stuff worth trying.
Looking good, Italian job.
I'm feeling good, Tommy boy. I was having a hard time getting the phone all situated. You guys, with your new fancy, newfangled technology, computers and things, I'm still using apparently an iPhone that has too much radiation that that apparently France has banned it. Good thing I live in the States, America.
I told you to upgrade from that TI-85 calculator, but it's all good things.
It's a TI-83, sir, and it's right here.
Bad.
And don't even pretend like it. I love me some TI-83. You didn't even know that was in my back pocket, did you?
That's like serial killer behavior. I'm terrified that you had that at the ready. But moving on. Hey, listen, you and I have some adventures in the near horizon. I'm headed to Savannah next weekend for GTE 40. And then you're taking just a trip around the block, right, for the next one?
Yeah, just going across the pond, so to speak, and going to Guildford, England. I'll be there the week after you're in Savannah. So yeah, we've got some travel coming up with the Grow Ruck events. Pretty stoked about it. Pretty excited about seeing how things are done on the other side. Just to see if it's consistent. How's that sound?
The log carries them. The log carries them. Well, listen, talking about traveling around, today's topic, I'm excited because we've got some high-impact dudes joining us from different parts of the country. And it's kind of a thought process on how ideas take shape when we beg, borrow, and steal from other regions and make things our own, right? It's the whole premise, really, behind stuff worth trying. So let's do, in typical fashion, let's do the Brady Bunch approach here. Going from left to right on my screen. Peli Peli, welcome to Stuff Worth Trying. If you can give us a name-orama and how you wound up with your name.
Yeah, sure. So J.H. Hugo, 41, Peli Peli. There's used to be a South African restaurant in Houston called Peli Peli, and I'm a South African food guy. Peli Peli is just a tiny little spicy pepper chili, or how they call it in Mozambique, which absolutely is true to brand with the F3. I don't know if they realize that, but they call me the Mozambican name for a South African. It's all African, right? It's all the same place. But
I mean, as far as other countries are concerned, we have no idea. So just call the whole thing Africa, right?
That's right. And the restaurant is now closed down, so they aren't expanding into other states. So the joke is that I can never post anywhere else because no one's going to know, what are we calling it? And, obviously, this accent doesn't make it any easier to explain.
Keeps it spicy.
Yeah.
I see what you did there, Tommy boy.
Oh, thank you.
Can't get things past you, sir.
I got a million of them. All
more than just a hat rack.
That's exactly right.
We're stacking them deep and selling them cheap.
All right. Carbomb, you're up, my friend.
Hey, fellas, great to have a chance to join you today. So Pat Cannizzaro, 40, Carbomb. On my first day, I had a shamrock on my shirt, and so I barely got 2 words out about myself before one guy shouted pot of gold. Got to shout out Apollo from the Peak here in Katy. And then right on the heels of that, my man Cash shouted out Carbomb, and everyone kind of immediately cringed and said, that's horrible, but we really like it. And so Carbomb it is.
When you're in public, it's just CB, but otherwise it's Carbomb, right?
That's exactly right. So awesome. Yeah, but like many, I've grown into my name, whatever that means, but wouldn't change it for the world now.
That's the way to go about it. It means it's just stuck the right way.
I just hope you don't make it to some kind of a federal list with a name like that.
That's right.
It'd be bad news bears.
I hope no F3 guys see you in the middle of an airport and shout your name out for that.
I have to be careful where I wear my swag. That's for sure. Anything that's got my name on it.
Good point.
That's it.
Good point.
Last but definitely not least, because this is where it began. But Dr. Evil, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks guys for having me on. Matt Mason, 43, Dr. Evil. I happened to be one FNG at a convergence in Naperville back in 2018, and I was EH'd by a guy with the call sign Mini-Me. And so when I got in the middle, I got about 2 sentences out, one of them being Mini-Me brought me, and I own 2 or 3 different small businesses. And Urkel, you guys know Urkel? Shout it out.
Oh, we absolutely know Urkel.
Yes, we do.
Urkel shouts out Dr. Evil, and that was it. And it just stuck. So, and once
me
again,
a freaking bone here. And the boss, the info.
You start to take on your persona for sure. So that's how I got Dr. Evil.
For those of you not watching YouTube, he's currently holding his pinky up to the corner of his mouth the entire time he's talking. So
petting a hairless cat.
A hairless cat.
Hairless cat. Right.
All right. So there's really not a big title for this because it started as one thing, right, with Dr. Evil and became something else. But again, in true fashion, it was inspired from the root. So, Dr. Evil, why don't you tell us about the root of this idea and the Viking games?
Yeah. So I want to make sure I give credit where credit's due. And last year when we really kicked it off, F3 Hazy, Dave Matthews is his name, goes by Hazy, and our Nantan at the time, Brick, Tony Pape. These guys, they kind of took a look at something that Naperville had done called the Lincoln Games. And the Lincoln Games was a week-long fitness-focused event where they basically scored points for how many times you posted and different times for events and different things like that. So when we spun off from Naperville several years ago to start F3 Geneva, we started to notice just like a different persona. I don't know if you guys noticed this about regions and different things, but F3 Geneva, we kind of had a different type of men show up and work out with us than what you were seeing in Naperville. So when Brick and Hazy and some of those guys were starting to talk about doing like a week-long game to build some camaraderie with the group, we knew that the sole focus on fitness level and fitness performance wasn't something that really met our persona for the guys that were working out with us. So we kind of came up with a month-long developing both the first F, second F, and third F events into this point system to ultimately see who could participate the most. It was to encourage participation amongst all 3 of the sectors of F3, and that's kind of how it came about. So we wanted to build camaraderie within the group without it being solely focused on fitness. And this is not by no means a shot at Naperville at all. They're a massive group over there, and they've done some awesome things. But at the time, it just seemed like they were very focused on the fitness, and that didn't fit our community. So we really focused across all 3, and we had all kinds of stuff going on. We broke down into teams. Hazy actually happens to be kind of a math whiz, so he came up with this elaborate point system. And you got points for different things. You got points for posting. You got points for bringing an FNG. You got points for hosting a dinner, whether it was at your house or at a local restaurant. You got points for volunteering. And I don't remember offhand if it was the number of hours you volunteered or even if you just showed up to help somewhere. Like we have at F3 Geneva, we have it's kind of a handshake deal, but we have a verbal partnership with a local homeless shelter. And so anytime somebody needs to be moved in or moved out of the homeless shelter, we put a group of guys together and we go help them move out. So like if you did that contributed to a point. And it was across all 3 spectrums. If you went to Coffeeteria afterward, we took a picture, and whoever was, if you were on the team that was at Coffeeteria, you got a point for that kind of thing. So it's just to get guys involved in building that fellowship more so than just the workout. And so that's kind of how it started. And then ultimately it culminated with a 1-day Viking themed game convergence at a new AO that we kicked off called Fangorn Forest, which is in Batavia, which is a town just south of us. And the team showed up, and we probably, I mean, I'll have to look back, but we probably had, 30 to 40 guys show up to that. And we just had a great time. So that's kind of the gist of how it got going.
That's outstanding. Just especially on the heels of a couple of previous conversations and this glad clown term we're kind of running with currently, and guys who show up just for the workout, or may lead and read and talk the talk, but are we really walking the walk? And that answers and challenges guys to do all three and beyond. Certainly, it doesn't make them just about themselves, right?
And the mission of F3, right, to build that leadership in the community, specifically with us men. And yes, fitness is a part of that because it's the whole get right thing, right? Like, I mean, if we're a big bag of trash, I have a military background, so we always used to say, if you're a bag of trash, people aren't going to follow you, right? So part of being, that high impact man is the fitness level, right? It's part of it, but it's also going out into the community and being seen and bringing other men into it. That's just something that, we really wanted to try and focus on for a month. And so really that was the gist of it. So it takes all three sectors to build that leadership capability in the community, I think. So.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. All right. So then let's talk in Texas, and what did you all do with it?
Yeah. So first of all, it's just so cool to have this conversation, and I had no idea of the richness of the whole thing. So I love that, and I'm inspired now for round two. But so just a quick kind of highlight for me on my own F3 journey. I've been in just over a year now, and after only about 2 or 3 weeks of having started here in Texas, I'm from Illinois originally, so I grew up in the western suburbs. I grew up in Geneva. And so, of course, just like a good brand new PAX, I looked up, is there a workout when I go and see my family? And sure enough, there's Geneva. So, I had only posted maybe 3 or 4 times here in Katy before my next trip back to Illinois, and roll up to the Arrowhead, which is in Wheeler Park, Geneva, which is a park that I used to play at as a kid. So, I mean, it's like a full circle, just crazy thing. And so meet these guys, and obviously, just like anything else, super welcoming, just like any AO I've had the privilege to visit, and went to cafeteria downtown Geneva afterwards. So I just start to build a relationship with these guys, and obviously I know I'm going to be back and forth to see my family. And so just immediately kind of building that, not only the 1F, and I got my butt kicked that day. They do a lot of running in Illinois, and I had never done a lot of running. So anyway, it was a great beatdown, but just started to build a relationship with these guys. And so then on my next substantial trip just this past summer, was with my folks, and posted, 4 or 5 times while I was there, and just so happened to be there for this year's edition of the Viking Games, and just had an absolute blast. Again, great guys. Got to do what in Katy we would call a double down. Went for a ruck beforehand with DeVito, who was nice because I didn't want to run, and so I think DeVito only rucked because I was rucking, and he didn't want me to have to go by myself. But anyway, just had a blast with the games, and the guys enjoyed it, and I really appreciated the thought that clearly the region had put into it. I understood that it was kind of this tradition, and I learned a little bit about it. And all of that is going on while Peli and I are getting our AO, which just launched on September 16th. We're getting our AO started. We went off the books back in April. And, Katy's had this crazy growth in terms of its AOs, and launches are, ubiquitous now. And so we went back and forth over, well, what are we going to do for our launch? We wanted it to be meaningful for the AO, But we also knew, for a lot of reasons, we weren't going to be able to kind of outdo what's been done. It's been done so many times, and some of the local AOs have really kind of perfected it and taken it, into the stratosphere, and kudos to them. And I think Peli and I both have a little bit of motivation to be different, to be notable, to be high impact. And so it kind of started to come together with this idea. One of the things that we wanted to do for our AO was have our AO host a CSAUP every year. And so I just was really, my imagination was captivated by this Viking Games thing. And I thought, man, the level of competition, the level of, friendly competition among the AOs in Katy is pretty strong. And I thought, man, I bet guys would just eat up this idea of a competition. And so we just kind of kept going back and forth on, could we turn this, could this be our CSAUP? Yes or no? And then if it was, man, what if we did this for a launch instead of just sort of the typical launch? And then, Peli, I'll kick to you, but I think you really helped kind of, for me, crystallize what the competition could look like and what the actual games could look like.
Yeah, I think it was such a cool idea. I've been in F3 now since probably 2021, April, somewhere there. So when Carbomb came up with the idea, I'm like, oh well, this is not very F3. So I was just constantly trying to pull it back to F3, and we nearly had to part ways with one of the guys when he said, well, why don't we just each have a clipboard and run the thing? And I said, you go and stand in the corner and think about that, and go and talk to the Vikings until you get there. But so I mean that was the challenge, right? Is how do you if you've been in the gloom in Katy, you know that F3 has a particular smell, but it also has a particular flavor, right? And how do you keep that F3 flavor in a competitive event like that? And I think what it came down to for me and in discussion is just that men tend to have a great time when they're playing, right? There's this, Jordan Peterson talks about the spirit of play, and you think about, even just a pickup game of pick your sport of choice. I'm gonna butcher whatever American one I pick, so I won't name any. But any pickup game, immediately becomes competitive and immediately becomes, man, that was great. I once led a beat down, and for the last 20 minutes of the beat down, we just played touch rugby, and two guys got injured, but everyone just had this fantastic time. So
are there extra points for broken bones?
I think broken bones got extra if it's just a pulled muscle. No, be a man.
Got it.
You got to do it properly.
You got to have standards.
Yeah,
that's it.
And then the other thing that I'm personally passionate about, I'm 5'8" in the shade, and about just about every direction you look at me, I'm 5'8", so I'm never going to be the fastest runner. So if you have events that are geared only to the runners, it's going to be frustrating. So we wanted to come up with something that, the quick guy is going to have an advantage, and the next event, the strong guy is going to have the advantage. The next one is, the not so clever but can lift heavy things guys. That guy is going to have an advantage. So we came up with these four events that culminated in, and I think both Carbomb and I are just so happy with what he came up with, which is the egg. I'm going to mess this up, but Egg-tastic Kiln Classic, right? So it's
nailed it.
So you have 8 guys around a pallet, the standard 40 by 48 pallet. One PAX is being carried with the egg in his hand, and then at different stations, and at each station you've got to do a different exercise. So for that exercise, the guy with the egg becomes the cue, and he's got to lead it. If the egg touches the ground, the whole team does 30 burpees before they can continue. If it breaks, you do 50 burpees, and then you can continue. So, guys were showing up with little fanny packs around the shoulders and stuff. They were gaming the system, which is perfect. That's exactly what we wanted to happen. But it was so cool. And that was that spirit of play. It's very hard to take yourself seriously when you're carrying your buddy on a pallet and he's carrying an egg in his hand. Like, you have to have that spirit of play. And So the event itself, which is great, this is, I think, how, in business, how I like to do things, and even at home, right? You take the goals and you take the big things seriously, but you should never take yourself that seriously, right? And if it's always grind and always fight and always just so hard, it's so tough, you never get out of that rut. So I think that spirit of play, that spirit of joy, is what we were after. And there's stuff that we can do better. I think, for example, not leave the region Nantan, and both the current and the former region Nantan were on the same team, and somehow we lost their registration. So when they showed up to register, they weren't on the list. And then they came third, and because they weren't on the list, the table sorting got messed up. So they came third, but we didn't announce it. We didn't even mention them. So, perhaps treat your leadership a little bit better.
I've met your leadership. They don't need any more ego.
That's right. Well,
those guys they're fine.
And you should, maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but I'm going to anyway, because I'm officially the president of the Keep Camo Humble Club. So
I love that guy.
Leaving him out of the event was just our little way of keeping him humble.
It's not about you, right?
That's right. We had a check-in table, and we had a bunch of double downs that counted for points and things. And so it's like 4:15 in the morning. Camo was the first guy who showed up, and he leans over the table and he's like, "Oh, Knights of the Gloom is our team." And we have this gentleman who was a volunteer. Actually, our AO is at a church here in the community. And so we had a guy from the church who was volunteering to help with check-in, and he's like, "You're not on the list." Camo just like immediately looks at me, and I'm like, "Man, this is like the first interaction of the day. What is going on?" But it all came good. So
and I think that was the big lesson, right? It isn't going to be perfect, but it's the spirit in which it's done, and you learn lessons. But I would just encourage anyone that's thinking of doing something out of the box, adding this element of competition, and I'm sure the Dr. Evil, you would agree. Just the fact of bringing a point system into it adds a completely new dynamic to it, right? So it's still you versus you, but it's you and your buddies versus you and their buddies, and it adds a dimension, which is great. It's not something you do every week. But like an annual CSAUP, I think it's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to doing the next one.
I know too. Y'all have talked about growth before, and one of the things that another sort of goal I'll say that we felt pretty strongly about for our AO is we want to be a place that brings PAX together more broadly than just our AO, and so this is. This was just such a great opportunity to bring a bunch of different AOs together, and we focused. So a couple of things that we wanted to do. One of the things about F3 obviously is it's open to all men, and so originally I threw out the idea, well, let's make this by invitation only. And immediately Peli's like, that's not F3. It's got to be open to everybody. So then I said, well, what if we invite everybody who wants to be invited? But right from the off, there was kind of this air of like, well, forget those guys, like invitation only, who do they think they are? And it's like, guys, everybody settle down. You get to be invited if you want to be invited. But from our AO, we sent guys to every other AO in our region over this course of 2 weeks to do a beatdown. And then at the end, in the announcements at the COT, we had this whole ridiculous written out proclamation and whatever, and it was the invitation to the Brickmaker Games. And so even just right there, I think quite frankly, a lot of the buy-in from the region was the fact that we, stepped out that way and went personally and invited people. I think some things just never sort of go out of style. And then we had we had our West Houston region and our Fulshire region just on either side of us. They both dropped teams in as well, and they were welcome to join. So the connectivity, I guess it gave us with the other AOs was really strong too, and an opportunity for us as an AO to become known and then start to see, other aspects of the region, and for guys who are newer to F3 to get to see other locations as well was a cool, unplanned element, but a nice touch.
And it ended up being, what was it, 176 packs?
176, yes.
Which was great. You think about 20 teams just on an open field. There's a video somewhere which we can share. Just gives you a perspective. It just, you have 20 pallets moving up and down a parking lot with these guys doing burpees and cadence. It was fantastic. It was
really, it's like a Tuesday at a Walmart.
That's right.
Hey, can I just jump in and just add, one of the things that I've noticed sometimes at F3, and this is just somewhat in our region, sometimes we get so focused on the growth of the width, so we want to grow in people, that we forget about the growth in the depth. And so one of the things that we've always talked about here at F3 Geneva is how much we want to invite new guys, but we also want that opportunity to grow deep with the guys that are currently, posting. We have at F3 Geneva, we have, I have to count them on my hand, but I think we have 7 or 8 AOs now. And so there's a lot of guys that get comfortable just posting at the AO that's closest to them or posting at the AO that's most convenient on their way to work. And so we typically don't see everybody that often. So we're growing in width, but we're not necessarily growing in depth. And what the CSAUP does, and we've actually kind of made it our goal this year, our fiscal year kind of starts where we do leadership turnover in March, is to do a CSAUP every quarter. So we try to bring all the AOs together to not only be an awesome opportunity to bring an FNG, but also to see the guys we haven't seen in 6 weeks because we've gotten so used to posting at the same spot. So I think the once a year CSAUP for what you guys did is awesome. I do think trying to do one once a quarter without it creating a whole nother, work environment for everybody is super important to building that depth that I think F3, at least F3 Geneva is really trying to do. So.
Outstanding.
Yeah, I like the concept of including all 3 Fs. I mean, we, like you guys mentioned, we all show up for a workout. That's why we initially posted for the first time, and that's what brought us out. That's why they call it the magnet. But we talk about how so many men in America today are missing out on having true male friendships. They know a guy that lives in the cul-de-sac, maybe a guy they work with, or maybe it's the husband of your wife's friend. And so you guys are friends by association because you just happen to be sitting in the same living room, drinking the same beverage of choice. So, that's the second F. That's the piece that really brings the guys into something and makes it go deeper. It's not just the surface level. Those are just guys I work out with. These are my friends. These are guys I can count on, I can depend on. And then the third F piece, we talk about that. That's the dynamite. That's what really makes this thing go. And that's serving someone else, some other way, not just you, not just your ego, but it's serving in the community. It's serving. Maybe it's in your faith, wherever it is that you attend services, if you attend services, but it's doing something more than just focusing everything on yourself. So all 3 Fs are combined in these types of competitions because the fitness, that's the fun part, just hanging out, just doing stuff gets guys' juices flowing, but it's hanging out with your buddies. That's that second F. And then the third F of doing something else for other people. That's what makes these events work. That's what makes these events powerful. And that's why guys look forward to these events. We hear these types of things from regions all across the country, and all of the regions say the same thing. It was so good to see the guys that I haven't seen in some time. Because as we grow, just like you said, Dr. Evo, as we grow out, a lot of times we neglect to focus on the guys who are still there because we're just so focused on getting the next guy, getting the neighbor down the street. But I love these events. I love these competitions. I love hearing, the names and how these things come about. But I do want to know, I want to know how the name came about. We're talking the Viking Games was the original name in Geneva, and then the Brickmaker being the name in Katy, Texas. So starting with Dr. Evil, where did the name Viking Game come from? And then we'll pass that over to the Katy boys about the Brickmaker.
So it helped that the Geneva mascot for the high school is the Geneva Vikings. But it also helps that Brick, Tony Pate, we call him Brick, happens to be, what's the word? He's an interesting character. Like he showed up this year in full Viking garb. Okay, like full on Viking garb. So he's a music teacher in the elementary school district down in Oswego, which is a couple towns south of us. I think it's Oswego. That he's so he's a very eclectic dude, and he likes the whole just dress up and the Viking theme to the point where we even call I know some guys call them Black Diamond workouts. We called ours the Ulfendar, which happens to be like a Viking term for I don't know, some sort of Viking warrior, and it was all brick. So he loves that term. So it was kind of that whole persona of our local town mascot, plus taking on the environment of the Vikings, the tough guys from the north. So
nice. And what about Texas? The brick maker. And I don't whichever one you guys want to take it. I'm interested in how that name came about.
Yeah. So the AO, our AO is the kiln, and that's a nod to a couple of things. One, our host, Redeemer Community Church here in Katy, is just a beautiful brick building, and so as kind of a nod to that architecture and structure, we like this idea of the kiln. And of course, we all know F3 to be an accelerator, and so for us. F3 is not a religious organization, but several of us being Christian, had this idea of being clay in the potter's hands, and how F3 is an accelerator. The kiln is an accelerator to removing what we would say like the softness or the comfort, and strengthening our resolve, right, and being the men, the high impact men that our Creator wants us to be. And so the brick maker just kind of flowed from that to say, these are games that are meant to build that 1F, 2F, 3F to strengthen the resolve of the competitors.
I love it. There's a lot of components here that are pretty special, I think, that I just one of which I really want to point out, and that is Carbomb that you shared that you used to play at that park as a kid, and I fast forward now and you're playing at that park as a grown ass man with your buddies, just like you used to. And I think that's something that we often joke about or speak lightly about. Yet, how often do we seek for that thing that is a bonding moment with our friends? And F3 has answered that in spades, and it's just proof positive in your experience and going back home. Making some new buddies and then bringing back the knowledge to your new home, right, and your new buddies. And I as soon as you said that, just a million scenarios went through my head. But the power of an opportunity to share in something that is difficult and challenging and also rewarding with your friends cannot be underlined enough. So, tip of the hat for the entire concept. I think we'll do this. You guys are all on Slack, so I'm gonna let that be known, because I anticipate lots of regions wanting to get down in some details maybe with you guys and hear more, maybe about some ideas or ask you about your crazy math spreadsheets that you had running. But note that these fellows are all on Slack and are easy to reach out to. If you're not on Slack, please get on Slack and share what you're up to. In the region, there is a Stuff Worth Trying channel on Slack, and we're looking for all types of regions. No offense to Katy, but guys, you gotta slow down just a little bit and let some other regions get their foot in the damn door. But that being said, all three of these high impact men are easily accessible on Slack and would be happy to serve you in such a way that would help your region launch something similar or bounce off ideas. Any final thoughts? Maybe a great story from the Brickmaker and a great story from the Viking games that maybe you saw something that changed a man.
I don't necessarily have a specific one other than what the Viking games did for us and for some of these guys is I think it gave some of these guys the confidence to go out and try to put together a CSAUP of their own. And so I know that in our AO, just like in most AOs, this is led by the men of the group. And so when a guy gets a crazy idea and he wants to go for it, as long as it meets a timeline that is reasonable, we're all saying yes. So one of the greatest things I think comes from the Viking games, at least the couple years in a row that we've done it, is other guys are saying, hey, I want to put something together. And so we've had other CSAUPs being put together by guys that I didn't think would be willing to do it. And they've gone and done it. And we've had, 20, 30, 35 guys show up. And it ends up being an awesome event as a one-time standalone. So that's really something that I think I've seen come from it since we started.
Nice.
I would.
How about you fellas?
I was going to, and Peli, you may have a different example. I was just going to second that and say, there are three guys in particular who I can shout out: Lakers, Gigawatt, and Wallaby, who are they came from the congregation at Redeemer. And we were invited actually to set up an AO there by the lead pastor, Mitch Mayer, F3 Steeple. And so Lakers, Wallaby, and Gigawatt from day one have been involved, and they've all kind of come to life, I'll say, within the AO sort of at different times. But this effort, I couldn't tell you among the three of them, like how many contributions they made, and watching them really own the AO and very much sort of play host on what is their home territory was really cool. So just second that, Dr. Evil, that watching guys shine in different capacities, doing these events it's great for sort of the final thing, but it takes me back to that point you make about depth, not just width, and giving it these events, the more complex they are, the more opportunities there are to lead. And so you see it change guys in just the execution and the pride that they build in the AO and the event, the opportunity that they're able to host for others.
Yeah, I think for me it's from that, it's how seriously these guys take these things, right? So again, not themselves, but how important it becomes to do these things the correct way. And that's, obviously they were phenomenal, but even at a team level, like the competitors, I was blown away by how the guys wanted to do it correctly, and they wanted to know the rules and wanted to understand it. And man, they were competing, they were going at it flat out. And when you stop and think about it, again, you're being carried on a pallet with an egg. You're not exactly an Olympian, right? But and the grand prize was a brick that's engraved by a Dremel. That we had some whiskey and cigars while Lakers did that over at his place, right? So that's the grand prize. But man, the guys were like 100% committed and doing it properly. And if a guy was doing a little bit of a skip instead of a broad jump, one of us would be pulled aside and say, hey, you need to check that out. And it was just so good to see that there are so many men in the community that take doing things the right way so seriously that it gave me a lot of hope for the broader picture, right? Because it's when we start taking shortcuts with the little things, like when you're playing golf with your buddies and, now you use the leather wedge to get it out, or you just, maybe knock one or two strokes off. You don't want to trust that guy. And what I saw in the event is there's 180 dudes that I can absolutely trust, because even in these little games, they do it the right way. They do it. They are interested and they take doing things correctly very, very seriously while having fun. And I think, so you ask about the man that was changed, and that was me, right? To see that as someone who has a relatively high personal ethic, that I'm not alone. There's all of these guys that have the same drive, that want to do the right thing. And it's not, you don't need to, just fight against there's this thing that goes around, you fighting against the culture. But it's not you against the culture. It's you and 180 of your closest friends banding together, making a difference just in the community, and that's not even talking the larger F3 thing. So it's just that perspective, I think, for me was really, really useful.
Well said, fellas. This is like a master class in keeping F3 strong. I dig it. We might have to break this one up in like 2 episodes and put it behind the paywall. Italian job. Yeah, it's about that time where I put you on the spot. Any final thoughts that you've digested through this conversation?
Yeah, it's one of those things that it makes me wonder. Just like we were just talking about the concept of, if you just pay attention to what you see on social media, what you see in the news, or what you're hearing about whatever media platform, you would think that the world is on fire and everything is broken, and you are in danger. And there's some truth to it, but also you realize every guy you post with in the morning is battling the same battles you're battling with, and he's right there beside you. And that personal ethic, I mean, that I had a conversation with my children this week, and my daughter said, "Why should I clean it up? I didn't make the mess. I didn't do it. Why should I have to clean it up?" And the thing that I learned, and it came through men like the high impact men that are on this meeting right now, is just because you didn't make the mess doesn't mean you shouldn't clean it up. If you don't clean it up, who will? I mean, no one will. That's the thing. That's why the parking lot looks a wreck. That's why there's shopping carts everywhere, why there's trash all over the ground. It's our responsibility to make things better for those that come after us. It's not because we want the accolades, that we want our name in lights, but it's because it just needs to be done. And if it's not us, then who? And if it's not now, then when? You guys all stepped into those roles to do the right thing just because it was the right thing to do. And it gave you a sense of pride knowing that you're surrounded by a bunch of other dudes that care that damn much, that they're willing to do the same thing. And it brings a little bit of joy and a little bit of in-your-face society. No, we do have a good thing going, and we're blessed to be around other men who love and care and care for what happens next. So it was an honor, men. I really appreciate you guys telling us a little bit of your story about what you have going on in your home regions. And I'm encouraged. I'm going into the weekend on a high note, thanks to you guys, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Appreciate you guys carving out time. Peli Peli, keep it spicy. Carbomb, keep blowing it up. Dr. Evil, Lottie freaking die. And if a grown man hasn't told you guys yet today, I love you. Appreciate you carving out time for not just us, but for the whole nation. And Podpackers, as always, be good or be good at it.